Peugeot Sports is the motorsport division of the French car maker Peugeot, founded in 1981 by Jean Todt. Initially competing in the World Rally Championship, the team shifted to sports car racing in 1988 with a Peugeot 905. Success would come quickly, winning both the World Sports Car Championship and the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1992. In 1994, they would enter Formula 1 with a McLaren-designed engine, but endured a difficult season, with 8 podiums, no wins, but 17 DNFs. From 1995 to 1997, Peugeot would supply engines to Jordan, but they would achieve just 5 podiums. Under political pressure, they would then partner with the Prost Grand Prix team from 1998 to 2000 in hopes of forming a French powerhouse, but would only score 10 points across the 3 seasons, prompting their exit from Formula 1. Peugeot has since found greater success in touring and sports cars, and currently competes in the World Endurance Championship with drivers like Stoffel Van Dorn and Paul di Resta. Many years have passed since they left Formula 1, so what if it was time to give it another go? So I loaded up F124 for probably the last time and simulated through the next 10 seasons as the Peugeot sports team, utilising the driver lineup of Franco Colapinto and Mark Webber. Before we begin, F125 is just around the corner, so don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with videos and live streams for when the new game drops. The Constructors' Championship will play out pretty similar to the real life comparison, with McLaren leading the charge, this time with Red Bull in second and Ferrari finishing in 4th behind Mercedes. The Peugeot sports team will see a solid P6 finish on their return, with Colapinto and Mark Webber taking P10 and P11 respectively. Moving over to the driver standings, and the first season will see Charles Leclerc remaining in 3rd place behind Lando and Max. But this alternate universe will see Max Verstappen forced to play runner-up, playing second fiddle to Lando Norris as he wins his first ever Drivers' Championship. He would be absolutely dominant, taking 11 race wins out of a possible 16, with Verstappen taking the other 5. The driver market would see a major shake-up after Daniel Ricciardo leaves the sport, making way for Nico Hülkenberg to make the move to the Racing Bulls. Lance Stroll would jump over to the Haas team, with Oscar Piastri making a questionable move to Aston Martin, while Enzo Fittipaldi will make his debut with McLaren next year. Mark Webber will also be leaving Peugeot at the end of the season, as George Russell is signed as his replacement. Logan Sargent is then given the Mercedes drive, with Théo Pourchaire set to debut with Williams. There will also be some small aerodynamic regulation changes, which will come into effect next year. The second season will see some changes at the top of the Constructors' Championship, as reigning champions McLaren drop down to 3rd place, with Red Bull taking their first title of this simulation. Peugeot will also make an improvement, moving up to P5, overtaking the Mercedes team. Franco Colapinto will remain in P10, improving on his points tally, while his new teammate takes his car to finish in P5. The Drivers' Championship remains pretty similar, but we'll see Verstappen ending in 3rd place behind Charles Leclerc, who finishes as the runner-up. This means that Lando Norris will retain his Drivers' Championship, and he does that by just 4 points. Despite a very small point gap, Lando would take 10 race wins compared to Charles Leclerc's 2. Verstappen was able to take 3 race wins, with his teammate Sergio Perez returning to the top step. Peugeot's top target, the French driver of Pierre Gasly, will be retiring at the end of this season, with Dennis Alger being brought in by Alpine for his debut. Théo Pourchaire and Enzo Fittipaldi will also swap teams for next year. Red Bull will manage to stay on top of the Constructors' Championship, with McLaren rising above Ferrari, while Peugeot still sit down in P5. Colapinto is slowly improving his points tally, even if he does stay in P10, while George Russell struggles a little bit more, finishing down in P8. Charles Leclerc will fall out of the top 3 this season, with Sergio Perez rising to take the 3rd place position. Max Verstappen will beat his teammate, but will still fall short of the championship title, as Lando Norris continues to prove his dominance. He will go on to win a total of 9 races this year, with Max slowly catching after he won 5. With Sergio Perez improving to take 2 race wins himself. A few more driver moves this season, with Nico Hülkenberg retiring, and Victor Martins being brought in by the Racing Bulls for his debut. George Russell is unfortunately dropped by the Peugeot team, with Oscar Piastri being brought in as his replacement. Aston Martin will then bring in Frédéric Vesti to make his debut. The rest of the departments, those being chassis, powertrain and durability, will now see their own changes for Season 4. There was a lot of mid-season driver moves this year, with Victor Martins being dropped just halfway through the season in favour of Oliver Behrman. Frédéric Vesti, Dennis Alger and Enzo Fittipaldi make a roundabout of moves for the rest of the season. The big regulation changes did cause a big shake-up in the Constructors, as Red Bull maintain their position, but Aston Martin move up to P2, Peugeot move up to P4, and McLaren drop down to P5. Colapinto does finally move up from P10, even if it's only to P9, while his new teammate Oscar Piastri is able to finish up in P4. The reigning champion of Lando Norris has finally been toppled, as he falls down to 3rd place behind Max Verstappen, who wasn't able to capitalise and take another driver's title. Instead, it will be the Aston Martin driver of Fernando Alonso managing to take his illustrious 3rd Drivers' Championship. Alonso would have a 50% win rate this season, with Max Verstappen taking 4 race wins compared to Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri's 2 races each, which also scores the first race win for the Peugeot team. Just a couple driver moves this season, with Sergio Perez deciding to retire after falling down to P7, with Logan Sargent leaving Mercedes for Red Bull. George Russell also makes his return to Formula 1 and will once again drive for Mercedes next season. No regulation changes and limited driver moves causes huge changes in the standings, as the Peugeot team managed to move to the top and win their first ever Constructors' Championship. Ferrari move up to second place, with the reigning champions Red Bull falling all the way down to P5. The reigning champion Fernando Alonso will fall down to P4, with Colapinto finishing just behind in P5. Max Verstappen once again falls short of a driver's title, falling to third place this season, after being overtaken by the former champion of Lando Norris. This means we'll have another brand new champion, this time in the form of Peugeot driver Oscar Piastri, marking a double championship for his newest F1 team. His 6 race wins combined with Colapinto's first race win helped them to the top. While both Norris and Verstappen would win 3 times, Carlos Sainz wins twice, and Fernando Alonso can only take just 1 race win. More driver moves this season, with Carlos Sainz retiring after that double race win, with the champion Oscar Piastri being poached by Ferrari for next year. The Peugeot team returned to their French roots to sign Esteban Ocon, with Victor Martins being brought in to drive for Alpine. George Russell is having an absolute stinker, being dropped once again, while Mercedes bringing Ayumu Iwasa to debut alongside some more regulation changes, but this time only affecting the durability department. Unfortunately, Peugeot cannot remain at the top of the standings, with Ferrari making their return to the top for the first time since 2008, while Peugeot have to settle as runners-up. The newest signing of Esteban Ocon can only reach as high as P7, but he does outscore his former team by an incredible amount. Former Peugeot driver Oscar Piastri falls to third place with his new Ferrari car, behind his former teammate Franco Colapinto, who is able to record his highest ever finish up in P2. However, the title will be won by a driver who has had to wait 6 seasons for another, as Max Verstappen returns to championship glory after a pretty dominant season. His 9 race wins took him miles ahead of Colapinto despite his 4 race wins, while Norris, Alonso and Esteban Ocon would all win a single race each. Piastri wasn't happy with his 3rd place finish and will retire from the sport, but does have that championship to his name. Lance Stroll is then signed and moves to Ferrari, with Johan Darubala being brought in by Haas for his debut. The Mercedes and the Racing Bull teams come to an agreement to swap drivers, as Iwasa and Behrman will trade places for a hectic next season, as all the performance departments are being affected by regulation changes, those being aero, chassis and powertrain. And it did have some major effects, as the previously mentioned Racing Bulls team would absolutely dominate the sport this year to take their first ever Constructors' Championship, while Williams will finish as runners-up and the Peugeot team drop down to P5. Esteban Ocon would really struggle and he falls down to P14, with Colapinto falling down to P7. Iwasa must have had some insider knowledge, as his switch to the Racing Bulls netted him a 3rd place finish, much higher than his replacement Oliver Behrman. Former champion Lando Norris returns to the top 3 to finish runner-up behind a brand new champion, as Yuki Tsunoda is able to dominate the sport, taking 10 race wins on his way to a title. His teammate Ayumu Iwasa will manage to take his 1st race win, while both Norris and Frederick Vesti in the Williams would take 2 race wins each. The only move would be Esteban Ocon, who leaves the Peugeot team without another seat, while the Peugeot team bring in another French driver in the form of Isaac Hadjar. Season 8 will go back to normal, with McLaren returning to the top ahead of Ferrari and Red Bull, with the Racing Bulls falling all the way down to P8, while Peugeot drop to P6. Isaac Hadjar doesn't improve on Ocon's performance last season, falling even further to P16, while Colapinto still has a strong season finishing in P5. Former champion Max Verstappen won't be able to return back to the top, as he finishes only in 3rd place behind Charles Leclerc, who is the runner-up for Lando Norris, winning yet another World Drivers title. The only race winners would come in the form of Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, with Norris scoring 15 race wins and leaving only 1 for Max. A big shake-up in the drivers' market this year is caused by the very late retirement of Kevin Magnussen, with Charles Leclerc leaving Ferrari in favour of Haas. Frederick Vesti has been pretty impressive this season and makes a strong move over to Ferrari, with Zane Maloney being brought in for his debut at Williams. Zhou Guanyu is then replaced by Dennis Hauger, with Jack Doohan eventually making his debut with Aston Martin next year. Behrman is also dropped by Mercedes, as they favour Johan Darubala, meaning Haas will need to sign another driver, so they sign the American Brad Benavides for his debut. Racing Bulls will also swap out their driver, as they prefer Arthur Leclerc over Ayumu Iwasa. Now, alongside those transfers, there'll be some more major regulation changes, affecting the aerodynamics, powertrain and durability departments going into the penultimate season. After just 8 races at Aston Martin, Jack Doohan is dropped, with the team signing Ayumu Iwasa as his replacement. The crazy moves and regulation changes didn't have much effect, with McLaren remaining on the top of the standings ahead of Red Bull and Aston Martin. Peugeot Sports will end the season in P6, just a single point ahead of Williams. Peugeot makes a very small improvement, actually scoring points this year for P15, while Colapinto continues to prove himself to finish in P7. Max Verstappen falls just short once again to finish in 3rd place, with a new face in the video, Theo Pourchaire, making his first appearance to finish as a runner-up. He finishes behind his teammate of Lando Norris, who is once again able to dominate for another driver's title. His 12 wins were nowhere near contested, as his teammate would win twice, while Verstappen and Vesti in his new car would both win once. Aston Martin will need to find another new driver, as the now 3-time champion Fernando Alonso decides to retire, with the team bringing back Esteban Ocon into the sport. Charles Leclerc also decides to retire and is replaced by Zhou Guanyu, with Isaac Hadjar unfortunately being replaced as George Russell once again drives for Peugeot. McLaren cannot be toppled in this final season, but the Peugeot team did get pretty close, only finishing around 70 points behind. Red Bull then finished 100 points behind them, with Aston Martin finishing just ahead of Ferrari. George Russell had a pretty impressive return season to finish in P5, just behind Theo Pourchaire. Now Franco Colapinto manages to make his way back into the top 3 with a 3rd place finish, behind the former Drivers' Champion, Lando Norris. This allows Max Verstappen to once again return to the top, despite not having the most race wins. Now his 5 race wins were beat by Lando Norris' 7, but no one else stood a chance after Russell would win twice, and Pourchaire and Colapinto would only win once. But that is 10 seasons simulated with the Peugeot team. Now let's have a look at the 10 seasons as a whole to see who the standout performers were. I think this simulation provided the most variety when it comes to championship winners, with 5 different teams topping the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari, Racing Bulls and the new Peugeot team were all able to take a single title, while Red Bull secured 3 and McLaren took the most with 4. There was also 5 different Drivers' Champions, with shock winners such as Tsunoda and Alonso securing a title, while Oscar Piastri might be disappointed to only win once. Max Verstappen was always near the top, but was only able to win the title on 2 occasions, while Lando Norris would finish his career as a 5-time world champion. 14 different drivers were able to take the checkered flag first, with Esteban Ocon and Ayumu Iwasa taking 1 race win each. George Russell, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz would win twice, Pourchaire, Perez and Vesti would win 3 times, while Colapinto managed to win 6 races across the 10 seasons. Oscar Piastri would take 8 race wins alongside his title, while Yuki Tsunoda was able to take 10, being matched by Fernando Alonso. A huge jump up to Verstappen then with 36 race wins, and then double that to 72 where we find Lando Norris at the very top. And that is going to wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really want to try and hit 10,000 subscribers at some point this year, so if you're not already, please press the subscribe button to show your support. There will be plenty of links in the description to all my various social medias, including my Discord server, which is the best way to receive updates about uploads, but also to talk to me and other fans of the channel. But that is going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.